Well, welcome again. Thanks for joining us for this SIGGRAPH Now webinar. So my name is Yoon Chung. I'm the SIGGRAPH 2023 Art Gallery Chair. I'd like to introduce myself briefly. So I'm a media artist and then an interaction designer and educator. So I'm an associate professor in the design department in the San Jose State University. And then, I've been participating SIGGRAPH for, I think, since 2009. So it's been a while. So happy to serve as, and also huge honor to serve as the art gallery chair this year. And then so great to be here today with all of you guys. So as we count down to the SIGGRAPH 2023. So I'm so thrilled to moderate this discussion. So what an honor to moderate this discussion. And this very, very special topic in the art space. So it's a topic as especially interest to me, but I'm pretty sure you guys are also interested to this topic as well. And also this is given based on the art gallery's focus this year, art as a time capsules, software, robotics, and the materialities. So please join me today. We have three amazing, internationally well-known artists, all of whom will be presenting their work in the SIGGRAPH 2023 Art Gallery. So I can't wait to introduce you to them, their work and their fascinating perspectives in a moment. We hope today inspires you and then this discussion excites you about what you can experience at the SIGGRAPH 2023 in Los Angeles and what's to come for the future of art. To everyone joining in now, so please use the Q&A, Zoom Q&A function to submit questions for our panelists as you think of them. And if you don't have any specific questions, totally fine. So you can upvote someone else's question by liking it within the Q&A window. So we can more focus on those questions. And then we'll put up the questions around like a 45 minutes mark. So we can wait to hear and then discuss your questions. So now let's begin. So let's move to the discussion you came here for. So I'm so excited to welcome today's panelists, our artists, Casey Reas, Behnaz Farahi, and Ebru Kurbak. So our panelists, could you please introduce yourself to our participants? So maybe we can start with Casey and then Behnaz and Ebru.
Yeah. Hi, Yoon. Thank you. I'm Casey Reas. I'm an artist. I work with code. I'm a professor at UCLA in the Department of Design Media Arts, and I'm a co-founder of the processing software with Behnaz Farahi dating back to 2001. And I also founded an online gallery called Ferrophile a number of years ago. I'm really excited to show my work at SIGGRAPH this year. Yeah, that's a start of the introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Behnaz Farahi. I'm a computational designer, artist, and critical maker based in Los Angeles. I'm also assistant professor of design at California State University, Long Beach. I'm extremely delighted to be among such an amazing group of panelists, as well as showing my work this year at the SIGGRAPH Gallery. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ebru Kurbak. I am an artist and researcher. I'm based in Vienna, in Austria, currently in Vienna. I am a senior research fellow at the University of Applied Arts, Vienna, running my own research project funded by the Austrian Science Fund. I'm also a LACMA Art and Technology Grant recipient and working on my project, which will be actually shown in SIGGRAPH this year. I work with a lot, or a major part of my work is at the intersection of textiles and various technologies. I use this to talk about actually the politics behind invention and research processes in technology. And I'm working towards bringing more diversity and a more inclusive research culture, basically.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So we have an amazing panelist. So I think it's time to get started. So I think first thing is probably our audience members are curious about the pieces you're going to exhibit in the SIGGRAPH 2023 gallery. So could you please each share a bit about your work in SIGGRAPH Art Gallery? And then what inspired, and then what can SIGGRAPH 2023 participants expect to experience when they visit in the art gallery? So could you please explain? Maybe we can take the same turn, maybe Casey and Behnaz and then Ebru, please.
Okay. So I'm going to be showing a piece called An Empty Room, which is a commission by the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. It's currently up there until July 2nd. And it was a commission in relationship to a show that's open there, also until July 2nd, called Coded. And that's a show of the history of the art and computers from 1952 to 1982. So it's a historical show. And my work was commissioned to be a contemporary artist, sort of inspired by the work in the show, showing a new piece. And the work was originally built around a proposal by Victor Vasarely, who was one of the founders of kinetic art and optical art. And the LACMA, LA County Museum of Art, had a program called Art and Technology, which was in the late 1960s into the really early 1970s. And Vasarely proposed this image machine, this electrical image machine that would be a grid of lights and would be able to produce a set of images that he would then take photographs of and then translate into his artwork. His artwork's very hard edge geometry. It's built around a grid. He developed this idea of color forms, where in the grid he was working with like circles, rectangles, different kinds of shapes, and had a very systematic way of thinking about his painting practice. And so he made this proposal to LACMA at that time. The machine was estimated to cost around $2 million, was never built. And so they asked me to sort of like look at this proposal and think about that now. My first instinct was to build it. And then I quickly sort of like moved through that and decided to build something a little bit different. And so it's a two-part commission. The first part is called Meta Vasarely, which is to look at Vasarely's work. Something I've been doing a few years is what I call the Century series, which is looking at different artists from the 20th century who are working with paint, but who I consider to be generative artists. I think they were working with paint because that was the medium of the time. But I think if they would have had access to software, to coding, they might have been working in that way. And so it's a research practice that I have where I look at their work, analyze it, and then make new work that's an homage to what they were doing. And so I did that with Vasarely's work. That was called Meta Vasarely. And then I did a second project on top of that called An Empty Room, which is a 3-channel projection, which takes a point of departure, Vasarely's painting style from that era, 1965 to 1975, but then moves into my own direction. And it's really about the history of representation in painting, like going back to analytical cubism, but it's also about simulation in the way that form, light, shape is simulated inside of computer graphics, like going back into the early days. And thinking about the nature of digital images, the space of color, the RGB space, and then rendering these images and then pulling them apart according to their data involved in them. So that was a lot of talking, and hopefully some of it came through. But that's the work that will be installed in Los Angeles in August.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, Casey's work will be actually part of the curated show in the art gallery, and then our SIGGRAPH this year will be 50th year anniversary, which is very, very special. So it's so great to, you know, the Casey kind of put together everything from Victor Vasarely's work, and then, you know, kind of check the old, you know, days computer graphics and then put it together. So amazing. Okay, so Behnaz, it's your turn, please.
Yeah, I just want to say before I talk about my piece, I just love that exhibition Coded at LACMA. So definitely check it out before June 2nd. Very good show. So the piece that I'm going to show at the SIGGRAPH called Returning the Gaze, or it's going to be an iteration of the piece called Returning the Gaze. I have to say that the theme of the gaze is an underlying critical concept that I've been working on for the last few years. And so I will keep coming back to the notion of the gaze more. But Returning the Gaze was actually a piece that it was initially commissioned last February by a fashion house for the Milan Fashion Week. So it was part of the runway show. They reached out to me to design an installation for a runway show. And I was really interested to think about this as a way of subverting some of the some of the critical issues that exist in the fashion world. I mean, fashion is an interesting medium for production of culture, but yet it's been very complicit in sort of sexual harassments, in the culture of sexual harassments and female objectification. So when they reach out to me with the question of like, how do you design an installation for a runway show? For me, this was an opportunity to really address that. How can I subvert this? How can I create this type of world where we can sort of return the gaze that has been watching the female body back to the audience? So in the middle of this installation, there is a model who is wearing a custom-made helmet, which is capturing the eye of the model, and stream that to 4 monitors that they're basically mounted on 4 industrial robots and is staring back at the audience. So this kind of like cyborgian vision where the gaze of the model expanded and extended to industrial robotic arms, staring back at the audience, creating this sort of uncanny feeling of being watched. The intention is kind of like make the audience to be more aware of this type of sort of subconscious biases that we have in our gaze on the way that we look at one another. So the piece that I'm going to show at the SIGGRAPH Gallery would be iteration of that, obviously in a different context, but still the question of the gaze and how, what feelings it sort of creates in us when we are being watched. How does the gaze can be expanded to robotic means? These are the themes that I want to sort of show in this installation at the SIGGRAPH Gallery.
Amazing. Yeah. Can't wait to experience it in our gallery. Thanks for sharing. Ebru, it's your turn, please.
Yes. The work I will be showing is called Reinventing the Spindle. It is actually the work I started developing thinking about in 2019 together with the LACMA Art and Technology grant. I have been advised by the MIT Space Exploration Initiative on this project, and I will tell more about the project, but the concept basically is what I'm doing is I'm performing research in microgravity environments, and the research I'm doing is basically spinning yarn out of raw fibers. Why I'm doing this, it emerges from the fact that the flax plant was the first plant ever grown in space. So the plant was in 1971, first plant grown in space. But I was very inspired by this fact, and looking at the history of research, I saw a lot of activities of making in space, like welding, glass blowing, soldering. A lot of making techniques were experimented with in zero gravity. However, I didn't find any textile experiments, thread-based experiments, spinning, and so forth until very recently. And the recent experiments are also kind of labeled as hobby and not as research. So to intervene in this reality of, marginalized knowledge not taking place or finding place in weightlessness, I decided to perform this kind of research. So actually the project is actually a performance, and I will exhibit a reenactment of this performance in the SIGGRAPH Art Gallery. So my aim is to bring diversity into the research structure, but also inspire the audience to experience, my subjective experience provided to them, and also claim ownership in technologies like this, or in commons or commodities like zero gravity, and think about their own potential experiments to be made in this space. So that's what I'm aiming at, to create more inspiration about ownership of weightlessness in a way.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So thank you for all the answers. So I think we can start by diving into the webinar sessions. The title, the theme, artists, time capsules, software, robotics, and materialities. So, I actually set the theme of the art gallery this year as a time capsules because, I feel like, artwork can be considered as time capsules. It actually preserved the storytelling, our, culture, society, the environment, all the things happening in that the time. And then artists, have their own creative lens. And then from their perspective, they create it, preserve it, through their lens and then put together and they exhibit it. And then when we actually look at back there is we can kind of understand then what they thought about it. We can also understand the what happened in the society that time. So I think I think it would be great to talk about just it might be a little bit abstract question, but what is a time? So the time is, as time is subjective. We feel like sometimes time is going fast or very slow, right? So perception of time is very different based on compression, decompression of time. So then I'm pretty sure, all our three panelists use time in your work, right? So how does your art use time? And how does it help understand the time? And then maybe other context or storytelling in your work as a time capsules. And then when you think about your work as a time capsules, what do you envision it? So how does it look like? So I think it's a kind of open, discussion. Maybe anyone can chime in, answer this question.
Well, the way I see my work, I mean, it's an interesting question. It brings me to reflect on my work from a point of view that I don't usually reflect from. And that's why I appreciated the topic. And when I was submitting to SIGGRAPH already, I thought about like, how does it relate? And there are a few ways that I see my work relate to the concept of a time capsule before talking about the abstract concept of time. Maybe because my work is very interventionist. I don't know if this word exists, but I do interventions. And I think a lot of artists work in this way. The way they do something needs to create some change. Obviously, not one work will create that change, but there is a desire for change when you bring in something, for instance, this intervention into microgravity research. So if I would imagine my work as a time capsule, maybe, or an object in a time capsule, my biggest hope is my work to destroy itself in a way, because once I create that intervention, I hope the context to create a different type of awareness, go into a different type of direction. So my hope for my work is in the future that it loses relevance. So I find that ironic in a way, in the way I work. So for it to be successful, actually, it should lose social relevance after a long time. When you open that and look at that work, you shouldn't be able to have the same concerns at that very moment. And maybe without context, you shouldn't be able to understand it. That's kind of the hope behind it. And I found that an interesting relationship between the way I work and your concept of the time capsule. So yeah, I can continue talking, but let's see what others say and I continue then maybe.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the thoughts. I think that's really, really cool. Like destroying itself is a really interesting concept. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting topic, right? Like the time and how it reflects in our works. I mean, in my work, creating a lot of sort of multi-dimensional experiences where a lot of time there is activations of components, the environment moves or activates through different materials or robotics. The question of time becomes so dominant. So creating interactive experiences ranging from the scale of the intimate scale of wearables and fashion, all the way to architectural scales of the world of interactive installations. The question of how you experience time becomes so crucial in this experience. So the perception of time is important. The perception of those type of movement in the space is important. A lot of time I work, for instance, with materials or activation system that is very difficult to see the movement. So I have to redefine or sort of experiment with different materials so people can observe the movement. So the question of like literally how I can direct people's attention toward a certain dynamic behaviors in my installation is something that it's become dominant. So how do you design motion, or how do you design certain movements in order to direct the attention in time is become crucial. But then I also want to talk about, so that was more of a pragmatic way that my practice sort of see the time. But in a conceptual or sort of like larger scale, I would say, theoretical scale, I would say my work encapsulates the sort of essence of particular time or a concept that it's related to that time or related to that specific concept. So for instance, again, back to the notion of the gaze and surveillance, this has been something that I've been really working on in the last few years. And really, for instance, the question of, let's say, male gaze is nothing new. In fact, the question of male gaze has been in visual cultures, the world of cinema, and the sort of humanities, the world of humanities for such a long time. But for me, it's very interesting to see that how emerging computational technologies could allow us to revisit this concept, to give them tangible meanings, and allow viewers to really contemplate or reflect on these sort of specific concepts, to think about their temporal dimensions, especially in the context of, let's say, Me Too movement or woman empowerment or protests like Women Life Freedom. How do we revisit some of these older concepts and then bring them on board and allow people to have conversation around those concepts? Is something that I think has become the way for my practice to encapsulate time.
I think it's the history of art is very much a time capsule of well, the history of art is a document of contemporary art, and I really think that the contemporary art of the past is a marker of different ideas and different technologies, and I really feel like the history of ideas and the history of technologies are completely intertwined. And so, like, when the idea of perspective first, and then sort of how it gets implemented, that changes the history of art. It changes the history of culture. That gets encoded in certain artworks. When people started figuring out how lenses work, that changes everything, changes our way of seeing, changes the way we imagine ourselves. And so that's something that's always kind of present in my work. I think more focused on like the work that I'm going to be showing at SIGGRAPH this year, I need time. My work always requires time because it requires change and difference. And a lot of my work has the unexpected embedded. Like, I sit in front of it, I can sit there with other people. I don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. I have no clue what's going to happen 15 minutes from now. And for me, that's really essential to the work that I make, and it just doesn't exist without time. And that unexpected unfolding of the performance is, I would say, like, one of the most essential things that software working with code allows me to do.
Yeah, there are a lot of really interesting points about the time conceptually and also physically, and then, especially performance or installation. We are working on, performance and interactive installation, and time is very the sensitive, important, thing to check. So yeah, it's really great to hear many thoughts.
One comment about Casey's point, which I think really fascinating. I mean, in a way, as a creator of software like processing, but you also sort of shape the conversation around. In a way, it's not just like waiting for tools to inform us what to do, but you're also creating tools that then inform the next generation of artists. So in a way, the role of the artists, creators, become sort of intertwined in what is the definition of time. It's not in a way one way, sort of become a loop almost.
And making
your case.
All of us, sharing together and making open source tools, things that people can open up the hood on, things that people can extend. And I think with processing, it's all about the libraries and the community of people who've made libraries that have extended things, for example, like Ebru, into textiles, into fabrication, into sound. That us sort of making things for each other and for other artists and sharing that, I think I'm always very excited about that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Software can kind of become like a kind of something like a very interesting medium to continue making like some kind of connection between the different generations, and then it's kind of living creature. So you never know how it actually will grow and the impact to other creatures as well. So I think that I use a processing definitely for my earlier like projects, and then now as a still many people use, and the P5J is there, and then so many like artists, designers, researchers use it to create their own things.
I think just one more thing on that really quick is like I think that when you work with nonlinear media, when you work with code, when you work with textiles, when you work with real-time input, there's a nonlinearity to it that I think it's so exciting. I think when you work with film and you work or digital tools that have a timeline, there's that sort of like regularity, there's that beginning, middle, and end. I think when we start working with these other media, time is fixed in a it's not fixed, it's unbound and it can unfold in many different ways and compress in with this real-time media.
One thing I would like to add, if it's okay, about this compression of time. I also felt like what you were talking about, watching your your installation, and it generates something that you don't expect. It's a bit like art history itself, like this expanded version of you don't know what will happen in the future is kind of compressed in your work. Also, similarly, like I am in the piece I'm going to show in SIGGRAPH, I'm actually including a technology that is above 20,000 years old, I think, the spindle. So there is the technology of space botany from 1970s merged with space, like microgravity, parabolic flight technology, which is maybe a little more recent. And then there is this 20,000-year-old technology spindle, which remained unchanged until Middle Ages, basically until the spinning wheel was produced. Actually, I have one on my table. I can show you. It's like a weight and a stick, which works with gravity, and it was invented, and it's the first rotating object on Earth. So it's kind of the archetype of all rotating technologies in a way. So it's like this essence of how people dealt with their environment, and humans kind of revolutionized the way they lived by making a string and started fishing and sailing and so forth. And when you think of history retrospectively, you always see these things like causes, a sequence of causes and events in a way. But actually, it's not like that. It's because we are reading it retrospectively. And when we look at today's technology, we think, this is the point we wanted to reach from the very beginning. This was the goal. But that's just one of the many paths that could have been taken. So in that sense, I think art practices have the chance to show compressed time and show different aspects of this history together in a very nonlinear manner. So I really appreciate this nonlinearity concept coming up in that sense.
Yeah, like Casey got inspired by the Victor Vasarely's work, like it's kind of resurrected the idea and they put together, and then showcasing the LACMA. That's and with using the new technology. So I think time is definitely non-linear. So that's amazing. Well, speaking of the technology, maybe we can move to the next question. So each of you use a different technology. I know you guys are all technology-driven like artists. So, and then probably each of you use many different technologies, definitely software, and then Behnaz, you're using robotics, zero gravity, and then textile threading, etc. So how do you use your technology in your art? I think that's really broad question, but maybe you can narrow down to specific parts, maybe the recent technology you use it for your this piece you're gonna exhibit in the SIGGRAPH. So any like surprising thing you discovered, or any like maybe any technology you impacted your artistic practice, or maybe your art like to envision or implement your ideas. How did you figure out the technological aspects? So what do you think?
I can jump in on this one. For me, in my practice, this has changed throughout my practice. In the beginning, when I started using technology, it was a lot of time learning new technologies, from coding to robotics to different material developments. It was just learning and mastering the knowledge, the tools. So a lot of time, my early work was really showing what is possible, what can you do with these technologies. In the last few years, it was more of, I got interested in the idea of critical computation. So how do you use computation to say important issues and critical issues of our time? So right now, in the last few years, the technologies that are used varies from various types of robotics to various systems for computer vision that can track gaze or facial expressions or any type of information that can be captured through camera systems, to mechanical actuation systems, so softwares. But any of these tools are an excuse to address it's a tool for addressing larger social, cultural, and political issues. So at this point in my practice, usually the concepts informs me that what tools I should find or what technology I should use in order to demonstrate that concept. And that technology can vary based on projects. And that's what make me really excited about the notion of critical computation, how tools and technology and computational systems can allow us to address larger issues.
Yeah, I think always for my also personal like artistic practice, I always try to like what is the right tool, but also sometimes tools or technology it's actually really it evolves over time, and then it really reflects our culture, society, our needs. So I think sometimes it's kind of learning and then applying the technology to the artist practice is also kind of become the context as well. So I think it's a pretty interesting one. Any other thoughts about tools, technology, or?
I think a very different kind of answer is just how the imagination of what I want to make is often not possible at different moments in time. And then 5 years later or 15 years later, it's possible. And how that changed the form of the medium. Like I think when I got started, for example, in 2005, I showed a series of printed images at SIGGRAPH in the gallery. I had to show things on print then because I wasn't able to do it real time. It wasn't able to be performative at the visual quality that I wanted it to be. And then now I'm, able to do things that are unfolding 60 frames a second in this way where I don't know what's going to happen, where it's not as predetermined. And so just the ability to work with GPUs and shaders, I mean, just on a way of being able to realize what I want to make has enabled new kinds of work. And that's been really exciting. Thinking about the history of what's been in the SIGGRAPH gallery over time. I think for me, moving towards real time and this idea that always this compromise between the visual quality of the images versus being able to be generated in the moment. And I think that's continues to get closer and closer.
Yeah, totally agree with it. And then I can't wait to see what's coming in the next 10 years or 20 years, like a SIGGRAPH 100 years anniversary, what will be showcase. So you never know.
Maybe I could also
Ebru, any thoughts about?
Yes, I could say a few words. For me, I think I am not like, I'm wondering if I am technology driven. I mean, definitely driven by curiosity in technology, but I have a feeling that technology is in my work not a tool or not a medium, but rather a subject. So I work around the concepts around technology, the issues around technology, technological development, and its implications socially. And so that kind of whatever I'm interested in defines which technology I am going to be working with. So I had I was not a space geek, for instance, before I did microgravity research. I just thought, why am I not ever dreaming of doing this? And that bothered me. And that's why I did it. So I involve with technology that I don't feel like I belong to. And I kind of deal with that feeling. So that's why it's not really exploring technology as an artist in my studio practice day to day and seeing the potentials of that, but more dealing with technology in everyday issues of that, and then working with that technology. And obviously at some point it has to become something that I can share with an audience. And at that moment, of course, I do explore the potentials of that technology and how that can be represented, shown, shared, and how it can evoke the feelings I would like it to evoke. So, but yeah, it's more a subject, I would say, for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that's really cool. And then speaking of the how the technology actually impacted, inspire you. SIGGRAPH is an internationally well-known, computer graphics conference, and there are a lot of innovative things, every year, innovation, and then constant creative, approaches actually are all discovered, right? So could you please share your previous experience or any engagement or any thoughts about the SIGGRAPH? How does it, if you already have a experience with the SIGGRAPH, participate in previous SIGGRAPH before, how does it impact in your artist practice, if any? Or what do you think about, overall, the kind of your participation in the SIGGRAPH? And then if you haven't participated in SIGGRAPH before, what are your most looking forward to about your participation this year? So any thoughts? I know, Behnaz, you exhibited your work in previous art gallery. Casey, of course. I'm not sure, Ebru, have you participated in SIGGRAPH before? Yes? Oh.
Actually, it's a funny full circle for me. Now that you're asking, I just want to tell this, about 20 years ago,
Wow.
I was rewarded I was a new graduate, and I was rewarded a trip to an art and technology festival by the university I was working at. And I chose SIGGRAPH. It was my first time in LA, my first time inside the convention center. It was 2004, so 19 years ago. I was not exhibiting. I listened to Bruce Sterling giving a keynote and saw the art gallery for the first time. I was back then an architecture graduate and had no experience in art and technology. So actually thinking about it, SIGGRAPH might have played a really huge role in kind of inspiring me to maybe change course and deal with other things. And then the first work I have ever done, funnily, in the art and technology field, if you may count it so, is a work called Newsnitter, a collaborative work. And it was funnily, I'm sitting here with Casey talking about my artwork, and he is actually the producer of processing, which inspired that work, or which was used also technologically in that work. It was shown in 2009, but I wasn't personally there. So this will be the first time actually I am going to be personally exhibiting. And the second time I'm going to be revisiting that hall. So it's going to be a good experience. Now that you're asking, yeah, it's quite critical for me, I believe, this summer's exhibition.
That's amazing. I feel like my first SIGGRAPH was 2009. I was totally like a baby right after grad school. Also, I feel like I was so nervous. I think I
was
kind
it
of
New Orleans? Was it New Orleans? Yeah, my work was there too. I couldn't go in. I couldn't go in person.
Kind of passed by in the hallway. So,
I wasn't there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. Okay, how about other people?
Newsnitter is such a good project. So good. My first SIGGRAPH was 2000, the Y2K year. It was in New Orleans also. And I was really lucky. I was a graduate student at the time at the MIT Media Lab in John Maeda's SEGS and Computation Group. And we put together a proposal and an installation called the Introspection Machine, which was these like video cameras on these sort of movable pieces. And you would point them at the different CRT screens, and it was basically a video feedback loop video art installation. But SIGGRAPH in 2000, the art show was amazing. It had like Camille Uterbach showing things. It had Danny Rosen showing things. And I feel that it was a huge influence on me and where my life went after that. I think at that moment and before, it was really like Ars Electronica in Austria or SIGGRAPH, where you could see these media art installations. They weren't embedded really in other places in the world. And so it's a major event for me, having that opportunity to show at SIGGRAPH Now.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, 2000. Behnaz, any thoughts or?
Well, yeah, I participated in 2019, just check out SIGGRAPH in Los Angeles. And it was very inspiring to just like sit down and listen some technical papers, check out the art gallery. I was just really felt like this is a great community. And then in 2021, I published a paper, art paper, as well as showed my piece at the art gallery, but everything was virtual. Although I really was inspired by just finding that community even virtually, but I felt that it was something it was missing. So I'm so looking forward this year to show in the gallery space and physically meet people again in person in Los Angeles. So just super looking forward to that.
Yeah, very looking forward to as well. I think actually we reached the 46 now, so I think probably we have to take some questions from Q&A, and then we can maybe go a little quickly. Maybe the question from actually the Joanne Collins. Don't you have to think about the arts concept? What technology could be used? What media and where will be shown the space?
Yeah, I think for sure, 100% for me on that one. And that's one thing that's changed for me over the years is I have started doing a lot of collaboration with different people. And sometimes I make videos, sometimes I make work that's meant for the browser for as much distribution as possible. Sometimes I make really site-specific things for certain buildings or certain communities. I think that's always a part of it. And when I'm outside of a medium that I know to work with, like sound composition or space, that's when collaboration comes in. So for me, yeah, I completely agree with the question and the ideas there.
I also
yeah.
I also agree that like a lot of time for me and my practice also, disinformation informs. I mean, it's iterative, it's back and forth. I mean, in fact, right now I'm sitting in a place that it's innovation space in my university that I teach, where because of this space, this cylindrical room, I produce a piece that also was sort of back and forth with the space, right? Like what a space I have available. If I have this cylindrical projection room, like just gonna run this in the background while we're talking, but like if I have such a space, what kind of how that informs the concept that I'm trying to say, and how that type of a space or technology that I have can be sort of starting points for developing an idea further. So it's always back and forth. I think the concept is very crucial, but then what kind of technology, equipment, space, and mediums you have available to transfer those information to your concept as well. So it's always non-linear and it's going back and forth. So
I think I already said how the concept also, like you, Behnaz, it's very crucial to my work as well. And that kind of defines the media and the technology I'm working with. About the space, I mean, that differs a lot. Right now, I'm working on a research project called the Museum of Lost Technology, in which I'm actually creating labs in between different disciplines in a way. Like I intersect thread-based knowledge with biotechnology one year, another year I'm working with mathematics, ethnomathematics, and weaving, or like I combine materials, and so that inspires some sort of research. And this research is never finished. So when an opportunity presents itself, a collaboration with a space, then it starts taking shape, actually thinking about that space sometimes. So that happens. But in an occasion like SIGGRAPH, where you submit a finished work already, that happens just right before the exhibition. So these are different according to in which conditions the work was produced, basically. So there is an ongoing studio practice in my case, where I develop ideas and works and drafts and prototypes, which never become a work before I decide to exhibit it. So that's the way I work.
Yeah, amazing. I think the ongoing art practice, I think that's really crucial to develop your ideas, hone your skills, and then, yeah, execute the whole good outcomes. Actually, Behnaz, quickly, one person asked you, what is your process? Do you believe in concept? You didn't answer this question, right, Behnaz? What is your process? Do you believe in concepts more, or in prototyping and then researching through making? And actually, you know, Behnaz, this is actually maybe a good time to showcase your new project. I see some eyes in your background. So yeah, could you please answer this question, and then maybe your
I'll try to be as quick as possible. So in my current practice really is more concept informing the work. So I'm a lot of time like getting interested in a concept. So for instance, this piece that you're seeing in the background called Blindness, and it was a response to protesters around the world that they got shot in the eye by police and authorities using rubber bullets to disperse the crowd. So for me was, how do we bring this victim's eyes to the audience and tell the story of these victims all around the world? It started from me getting awareness about Iranian protesters that they got shot in the eye, but I realized that it happens in US, it happened in Hong Kong, it happened in Chile. So a lot of time, the concepts like this has become crucial, and then it's the question of what kind of mediums you use, what kind of space you use, how do you tell the story of this concept through various mediums. That's where my current practice is really focused on, to bring the concepts, unpack it, and then use various ways of prototyping, from digital to physical to robotics, and tell that story through those mediums.
That looks really powerful and very meaningful. So thank you so much. I wish, you know, there's you probably will showcase in that works. So yeah, somewhere later. Maybe this is actually a good chance. Maybe Casey and Ebru, maybe if you can share your current ongoing project or future work, anything. Yeah, any what's next? Yeah. Quickly, any answer about your
I can jump in. I'm actually, as I said, I'm working on this idea of the Museum of Lost Technology, and here I'm looking at history, basically, and looking at actually missed opportunities in history. So whatever I create actually could have been created years ago, but these missed opportunities actually try, like these technologies that I develop at the intersection of women's work, nomadic knowledge, any marginalized knowledge, and high technology, or as we call it today. I'm interested in creating pieces that provoke the idea that what we're thinking today is also versatile and is also not, you know, the final point, and can be wrong and can be mistaken and so forth. I'm still dealing with this idea of weightlessness as a commodity, who owns weightlessness idea. I'm developing a large-scale piece in my studio as a continuation of that LACMA project. It's actually my imagination of a specific location on the ISS, the beam module, and I reconstructed a copy of it in my studio, and I'm kind of imagining it to be a gravitational craft research center. So it's an imaginary that I'm creating also about low Earth orbit. It's turning into a market, and how can we reflect on other knowledges to be tested there and so forth. So that will scale up the work and finalize that work. So yeah, as I said, working at the intersection of many different fields in science and technology and crafting knowledge.
Sounds amazing and ambitious and incredible. So yeah, can we see more? Casey, any current project?
I can do it briefly. I'm working with in the broad idea of the history of visual technologies, and I'm making works that are photographs technically, but they're made through photochemistry, like origins going back into the 19th century of photochemistry. They're made with early computer graphics technology, the bitmap technology, which would take a continuous tone grayscale images and turn into black and white images, and then also with machine learning. And so it's about taking these like 3 different eras of visual technology and sort of embedding them in a single image, and showing those as series of photographs or photographic imagery. That's what I'm up to now. I think I'll show that for the first time in spring 2024, so I don't really know where it's going to go.
Sounds amazing too. Okay. Wow. Actually, we have 5 minutes, but I think this question will be pretty interesting. So if you could choose a keynote speaker for next year's SIGGRAPH conference, who would be? Who want to invite it? If you're like a SIGGRAPH chair, who you want to invite it? Maybe one person per person.
I can never answer this question. It's really tough.
I think, so I'm from Iran, and when I was in Iran, I was always inspired by the work of Harvard professor Christoph Fodivsko, whose his art is always sort of a critical vehicle to use technology for larger scale projection to tell interesting critical stories to public. Then when I moved, so Christoph Fodivsko is one of my favorites, and then another would be Laurie Anderson. I think she's a pioneer of how you can really think beyond boundaries of what is possible. She's just a huge inspiration for me to really see how you can see the world through different cultural lenses, to see beyond boundaries, and to push edges and be fearless and brave. So I would say Laurie Anderson would be my first choice.
Yeah.
Those are great. I don't have anyone in mind. I would have to research that more, but I think someone who could speak to AI, machine learning imagery, and ethics, machine learning imagery and bias around the ethics of data sets, around the bias around race and their limited sort of views of the world and humanity and culture. I think that would be a really essential topic. Like
Kate Crawford, maybe, or yeah, somebody like that.
Yeah, I know last year or 2 years ago, SIGGRAPH, there's some kind of discussion going on about the AI ethics, and then, yeah, so those issues. So I think it's probably SIGGRAPH is looking for a person who can speak about it. We have 2 minutes, so it's pretty tricky. Maybe one question quickly, and then maybe one person can answer. So tell us more about your work. Art can serve as a performance. How your art can serve as a performance. Any one person can answer this question, please.
I use the word performance bluntly, like I'm not a performer at all, but I just wanted to, like, when I was using that word, I was talking about not my art as performance, but my research as an artistic maybe intervention, and therefore the performance of the research, the actual making of the research is the piece, in which, like, me taking the time to do that research is the piece. In that sense, I would kind of see it as a form of performance. Obviously, it's not performing at that moment to an audience, but it's being done. And also in this piece, Reinventing the Spindle, because of COVID, the flight that was organized by the MIT Space Exploration Initiative, it took really long to take off. So in these 2 years, I talked with engineers, downloaded PDFs, understood this very technical kind of outlines and guidelines, and negotiated those. I even see that part of the work as a performance, because maybe, there were knowledges it was a very open-minded setup, but still perhaps there were some biases in the system, like they had expectations on what had to be researched there, maybe, and like by bringing in something else, you actually do intervene into that structure in a way. So all that process leading up to the actual flight, and actually trying to spin in that flight, trying to be aware of your body and try to create something, all this I see as a performative work in that sense. So that's how I would relate it.
Yeah, I think that's really important point. Okay, so I think we have to wrap up. So Casey and Behnaz, any really quick final words for our attendees here? So super quick final thoughts or.
Look forward to seeing people in August in Los Angeles. Please say hello.
Amazing.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to meet all of you and meet everyone at SIGGRAPH.
Yeah, so please come. Yeah, so I think first of all, thank you so much for joining this webinar, everyone, and a huge thank you to our panelists. It's really was hard to make it happen. So really appreciate your time and then whole energy consideration for this webinar. So if you want to listen to this presentation again, look out for the recording. So it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel soon. So please, keep it, check it out. And then finally, don't forget to register for the SIGGRAPH 2023 conference taking place in Los Angeles Convention Center from August 6th to August 10th. So you don't want to miss it. So it'll be because after a long pandemic, it'll be fully in-person conference. So please come check it out. And then so that you can visit the incredible, amazing art installations in the art gallery and also other inspiring conference programming. So please come. And then I think that's it. So thank you, everyone. And then I'll see you in LA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yoon. Thanks, Ebru.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Behnaz. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.